It is always good to have Georgia Governor Brian Kemp in the studio with us. Good morning, Governor. Welcome to WSB again.
Hey, good morning, Scott. Good to be on with you.
Okay, who won in Iowa? Has anybody told you?
Man, I think everybody's declaring victory out there. Rumor is that Stacey Abrams will be declaring victory soon in Iowa.
Well, of course, that's our top story this morning. And, this, as I tweeted earlier this morning, I won't put words in your mouth, but here we depend on this train wreck called the Iowa Caucus as the first cut to the presidential preference contest. What do you think about pushing Georgia as a first primary state here in the future? I mean, could we handle that?
Oh, I think we could definitely handle it. We saw how well we performed in the SEC primary. I always felt like Georgia ought to have more influence just because we're a big state, very diverse, has something for everyone. We got a good vote count. I mean, the problem with the caucuses are, I know it's an age-old tradition, and people are very passionate about it, but it's also very flawed, as you can see right now. So now you have nobody has any idea what happened last night. Everybody's moving to New Hampshire, and if they can't clear it up in the next day or two, it won't matter what happened in Iowa. I'll be focused on New Hampshire. So I think there's definitely a play there. The problem is you got to get the political parties to play ball, because if you go early and your delegates don't count, then you're basically wasting your vote. That's really the tough scenario that you face trying to jump out front without having the political party's support. But it's certainly something they need to talk about, or either even look at a rotating plan where different parts of the country have the opportunity to be first every so often.
I'm glad you said that about the demographic makeup of Georgia. I mean, we are more of a microcosm than the rest of the country than, let's say, Iowa is, right?
Well, look, I have a great appreciation for the premise behind smaller states like Iowa, where people are building the ground game. They're going into people's living room. But, the candidates did that here in Georgia. There were people doing rallies and town hall meetings and bus tours in our states. I mean, you can do that just as well here as you can, in a small Midwestern state. All right.
Governor Brian Kemp's with us this morning. Plenty to talk about. We'll talk about some budget cut pain, any concerns about the coronavirus in Georgia, and more after we update weather and traffic. And now the mind-bending business of coming up with a state budget, Governor. It is the number one responsibility for the state legislature, and obviously yours as well, to figure out how to spend state money. That first of all, let's talk about some of the challenges there. I mean, you still want to do the teacher pay raise, right?
Yeah, certainly a priority of mine. I mean, that was one of the biggest campaign promises I had. I also think it's one of the biggest issues facing our state. Every business needs more qualified workers and trained workers, and that starts in K through 12 education. So I'm going to continue to be focused on that. I believe that's what the people of the state want us to do. And I said, even when I was running before we had the revenue slow down here a little bit, that we need to make government smaller and more efficient, be a better steward of our resources so that we can fund our priorities in the future, and that's really what this budget is doing.
Now, you talk about a revenue slowdown, and this on the heels of constant announcements about economic expansion in Georgia. Where's the disconnect there?
It really doesn't even seem like this would be possible, but it is, and I think what we've come to the conclusion, and there's a lot of different factors in this, but our economy is unbelievable. Lowest unemployment we've ever had, the most people in the workforce that we've ever had. The problem is we've had so many people coming into the workforce over the last 7 or 8 years, we're just running out of people to fill the jobs that we have. So while we're still growing, we're not growing at the rate we were 2 or 3 years ago with new people coming in that are paying into the system. So the revenues are still positive. They're just not as positive. And then you have a lot of growth in the budget or holes, like the tax cut took $500 million out of the budget. So that's money that we had to account for.
Do you see another tax cut coming?
Well, we didn't propose that in our budget. I stand ready to work with the legislature if that's something that was a priority of a previous administration. I want to cut taxes. I just think we may ought to do it in a different kind of way. But if that's something the legislature wants to work on this year, I certainly stand ready to work with them to do that, and we'll do it wholeheartedly. But we also, we have $100 million of growth in the education system that we have to fund, the university system. We had $90 million of new growth in Medicaid. We have $50 million of money in the mental health program that the budget didn't have last year. So there's just a lot of these different things that we're having to account for. The dual enrollment, there's been a lot of talk about dual enrollment.
That thing took off like a rocket the past few years.
The funding for that has increased. It's like 260 or 360%. I mean, it was on a pace that was unsustainable. But, what used to be $20 million is now over $100 million. And when you start out having to fill those holes, if you don't have the $1 billion plus revenue growth that you've had in years past, you just have to adjust for that, and that's what we've done.
Educate our listeners on the kind of authority the governor of Georgia has, let's say, over the President of the United States. The President of the United States does not have a line-item veto on the budget. Do you?
That's correct. Yes, okay. I do. And, there was a few things that I vetoed last year. Not too awful much. I mean, look, the budget we had last year was phenomenal with the teacher pay raise. I should say budgets because there were two of them. Mm-hmm. The school security money, just all the different things that we did that were priorities of ours to be able to go after street gangs and drug cartels. And we're going to do the same thing this year. There's a lot of differing opinions, which is always tougher when you're cutting a budget. But I stand ready to work. We got a great team at the legislature with the House and the Senate, and we're working with them, and we're going to come up with – the good thing for Georgians is we're going to balance the budget, and it's going to be a good budget, and our state's going to keep moving forward. We're not going to have the financial difficulties that other states have, and really because of the leadership and legacy that Governor Deal left us with and the reserve fund and many other things, we're very well prepared to get through a slowdown like we're in now, or if we had something worse than that happen, we can weather that. I don't think that's going to happen because our economy's doing so great, and certainly with the recent China trade deal that President Trump was able to get done, I think that's got a lot more people optimistic in ag. And I was at an international trade conference on the coast yesterday with the ports and some of our international partners that are doing business at the ports. They're very excited about the opportunity we have to ship more frozen poultry out of our ports because of the trade deal and other things. So I think that's also going to help us. And thankfully, so far, we haven't had a hurricane disaster like we had with Michael that really devastated the economy in southwest Georgia.
Do you see any potential, would you entertain a potential for other sources of revenue like increasing the tobacco tax or maybe even entertaining a casino gambling?
Well, I've never been in favor of raising taxes to fill a budget gap. I just don't think that's good policy. I think we've got to keep our tax environment and our business environment just right in the state of Georgia. And we've done that for a long time. That's why we're the number one state in the country for business. I mean, you look at what Delta did the other day, giving back to their employees. That's because they had done well and they had a good year and we have a good business environment. So I'm very careful to use gimmicks to fill budget holes. I think we should do that with sound fiscal policy and really doing what we said when we campaigned, making government smaller and more efficient. We can certainly do that.
Glad you're with us this morning, Governor Kemp. A lot more to talk about, including high-stakes testing in the state, the coronavirus. I want to talk about the gangs program as well. Scott Slade with Georgia Governor Brian Kemp in studio with us. Again, thanks for joining us this morning. Sure appreciate it.
Great to be back.
You've got a news conference this afternoon, Governor. You're going to talk about some legislation dealing with high-stakes testing in Georgia. And, of course, I'll let you wait till then to announce what the legislation is. But, what kind of testing are we talking about, and why now? Why is it needed?
Well, look, I heard this during the campaign from parents and teachers at the local level, just frustrated, too much testing, takes too much time. I mean, literally just people almost in tears when they tell you about this, the effect that it's having, the stress it's putting on their kids, the stress it's putting on our educators in the classroom. And we heard that on the campaign. Then, Superintendent Richard Woods and I, the state school superintendent, went on a listening tour for months, and the governor's office of student achievement, a lot of other people, the state school board, and really in a collaborative effort to listen and hear. And people were telling us the same exact thing. So this legislation is going to reduce the amount of high-stakes testing in the state, really give our educators more flexibility, and quite honestly, just let them do what they do best, and that is teach our children.
Now, you got feedback from teachers along the way.
I'm talking about passionate feedback in the teacher listening sessions we did. We have all kind of different working groups right now working on curriculum and other different things. So it's been an unprecedented effort of the bottom-up approach, not the top-down, us saying, well, this is what we need to do. We've been listening to the people that are on the ground, and quite honestly, just like our school security money, we gave it to the systems with complete local control because we felt like they knew how to secure their campus better than some bureaucrat in Atlanta or anywhere else, and it worked great. They did an unbelievable job. They're different scenarios for different schools, and we want to allow a little bit of flexibility with testing, but we need the metrics, right? We got to make sure we're measuring so that we're achieving the goals that we need. But there's been a lot of states that tried all this high stakes testing and testing all the time, and most of them are moving away from it now. Things are changing. I saw Elon Musk tweeted yesterday he's hiring people to work on AI. He doesn't even care if they have a high school degree. So we've got to be flexible to let people learn and be successful in a lot of different ways in today's world. And I think this is what we're doing. And, we're going to have a process. We've got to get this through the legislature, but we've been very open and transparent about listening to people, and we'll continue to do that through the process.
You and I have been talking about the violent street gang problem for a couple of years back during your campaign. Where does that stand now? And are you making progress? Are you getting the gang database up and running? Is the GBI getting some teeth now to be able to dig into this?
Yeah, really, since we talked last year after the session, the database is up and running. The gang task force, the initial funding was done last year. They are up and running, had an incredible year. The request and response that they have gotten from the local circuits, prosecutors, law enforcement has been overwhelming, so much so that they need some more resources. So I proposed that in this year's budget. We also have a piece of legislation to put some more teeth in a pretty tough gang statute that we have now, but there's more that we can do to really help our prosecutors be able to hammer home these people. And Scott, there's been a lot of debate in the press about this, but this is going after the people that are selling drugs to our children, that are shooting up our neighborhoods, that are contributing to human and sex trafficking, which our First Lady has been so passionate and done better, in my opinion, than anybody in the country to raise awareness to. She was at the White House the other day and so was Attorney General Chris Carr, working with Ivanka Trump and the Trump administration. They are doing a tremendous work too. So there's a great partnership that we're building, but it's a big problem. But it doesn't take away from what Governor Deal's legacy has been with criminal justice reform, and I believe that we can do both of these things in our state. It'll make our state better, and it'll keep our families safe.
You said a little controversy in the press about this. Was there some question about whether or not we have a problem?
Well, a lot of the naysayers to being tough on gangs are saying, well, you're moving away from criminal justice reform, and that has nothing to do with this. We're not moving away from anything. This is just another cog in the wheel of public safety reform, building off criminal justice reform that we quite honestly led the country with.
Any concerns at all about the coronavirus and how it might impact Georgia? What's the governor's office doing there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely concerns about it. I was on a conference call end of last week with the nation's governors, Secretary Azar from Health, Dr. Redmond, who's here with us at the CDC, doing a great job at the CDC here in Atlanta, Department of Homeland Security Deputy Secretary, or I think it's Acting Deputy Secretary Ken Cuccinelli. The good thing is the Trump administration has an experienced team working on this. Secretary Azar went through this with the Bush administration. I think it was on the SARS outbreak. They know that the first line of defense is our public health network that we have in the counties across the country. We have been working with Dr. Toomey at that works at this part of my administration, and they are gearing up to be ready to do what the administration needs. I think they got a test created as fast as they've ever done, so we can test for the virus. They've taken really, I think, aggressive, well-needed steps dealing with the the big international airports across the country. So they are on top of it. They know that they need to be successful. They have to work with the locals, and we're their conduit, and we're absolutely on tap to do that with them, and they have a good plan in place.
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, we appreciate you spending this time with our listeners this morning. We'll check back with you during this session of the Georgia General Assembly. It's always good to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Scott. Have a great day, everybody.